there's a psychological component often to this too, as we talk about things being too complicating for somebody or needing to simplify a little bit. And if we looked at all retirement planners as a whole, there'd be a range of different emotions or habits or just psychological components that would come into play. I'm just curious if you could narrow in on one in the world of pilots that tends to be, I don't know, a drag for most pilots, or a reason why some pilots struggle with this planning, or why they need so much help getting through it. Is there a particular, I don't know, personality trait that you see pop up the most that either holds pilots back, or maybe it's a positive one that helps them?
Well, the first thing that I focused on is use the word drag, which, pilot's going to understand, having induced drag on their airplane.
I wish I was smart enough to have actually made that made that connection and that pun there, but yeah, it was an accident.
I think pilots are really guilty of procrastinating. I think that,
Okay.
they're flying around the world or whatever they might do. And when they get home, they want to focus on family. And so if there's some sort of a fear there for planning for retirement, which is probably one of the most important things you can do to protect your family. Pilots tend to procrastinate. Hey, I'll do that next week, or hey, I got this going on, I'll eventually get to that. And knowing that, I can call them out on it. Like, hey, you can't just ignore this and expect it to go away. I know, hey, we might want to do this next week or next month, but I think having a way to force them to make sure they're doing the steps for retirement, or forced discipline is what I call it, is really going to help people in the long term and get to that point where we are doing some retirement planning. Because the little details, even in your 20s and 30s, are going to have a drastic effect on how your retirement picture's looking like as you ease into retirement.
Absolutely. All right, let's zero in on the actual planning process. And I'm curious, where do you see pilots getting tripped up the most? Is it that they struggle with life insurance policies, or maybe they don't know why they have the investments they have, they don't know what they're paying in fees, or some other element of the planning process? Is there an area where you see most pilots struggling?
I think all of those things you brought up. I mean, obviously, life insurance is complicated, and understanding all the little bells and whistles that come with a policy is important. I think a lot of pilots are invested in stuff and they don't understand mutual funds, ETFs, what their exposure is to certain asset classes and what the goal of those asset class exposure is. So just understanding what a portfolio is versus just investing in one asset class. I see that a lot. Pilots like to stock pick. They like to just invest in one asset class. They like to invest in stuff that's popular right now, whether it's, Bitcoin or big tech. And I think all investors are guilty of that, but I think pilots especially, they want that home run all the time, and it gets them in trouble. You bring up fees. I really think a lot of investors don't understand fees. I think there's so much put out there about, hey, we want to keep fees low, which that's 100% true. But sometimes you can cut off your nose to spite your face. I think a lot of pilots out there do not get a financial advisor because they don't want to pay a fee. And the simple fact is, had they have paid that fee, they would have gotten a lot more return over their career. And, they've done many studies of this. I mean, I think it's an extra 3% per year is what the Alpha study did with Vanguard. And there's another one out there where you'd end up having 75% more money over the course of your career had you worked with an advisor. So focusing on fees and not being cheap, we'll call it, because that's what it is with pilots. They're being cheap. They don't realize actually how much that hurts them in the long term. And I find myself getting a pilot that's reaching out. They're 63, 64 years old, and all these mistakes have already been made, and it's much, much harder to clean it up and get them prepared for retirement had you been working with them a long time ago. And I personally feel like this is the same thing with TurboTax. Get a qualified CPA. They're going to find something that's going to help you more than what you're going to pay them. And I see pilots a lot of times still trying to do their own taxes. TurboTax is going on. Then we're doing backdoor Roth conversions or something like that. And guess what? TurboTax doesn't know how to handle that. Pilots are cheap, okay? And they know they are, and I call them out for it. But this is your retirement. This is where you want to spend a little bit extra attention and maybe even a little extra money to make sure you're going to be in a better position.